welcome back to the You're Too Valuable podcast. It's been a little bit, and we've gotten some things taken care of. Robbie, I ask you to please take that hat off. If you can't see it, it's a disgusting hat.
I mean,
Anyways,
I'd be pretty upset too if my team got swept and they were supposed to win the whole
yeah,
thing. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Anyways, you can take the hat
Damn
off. It's not
Avalanche.
necessary. Whatever. Go away. Anyway, so let's introduce ourselves. I'm Gregory. I'm one of your You're Too Valuable podcast hosts. Geez, there we go.
It's I know you're thinking about that sweep. I get it. What's going on,
Oh,
guys? It's Robbie reporting live from Las Vegas, Nevada. Golden Knights, baby. We are going
bleh.
to the Stanley Cup final. The
Y'all got
Avalanche
lucky. It's rigged.
are not. But I'm going to pass it over to my other co-host,
Hey
Mr. Jesse.
everybody, it's Jesse coming from Colorado with 3 championship wins in franchise history.
Boop. There we
So,
go.
been there, done that. Y'all have fun. It's gonna be
How
good
long
to
have you guys
watch
been an
y'all.
organization for?
So,
Anyways, we
it's
don't
great to be
buy
here
our stuff.
today.
We don't buy our stuff, so we're good. Yeah, we're
Okay,
good.
got it.
Anyways, so let's get on task today, and so that way we're actually doing what we need to do and having a nice conversation and discussion today about when you should call it quits
One of
and
my favorite topics.
when you should not call it quits. My favorite topics. Um, yeah, I think it's about when you're calling it quit and when you should maybe, say, hey, I'm done with this. We've kind of alluded to it many times while we were on our podcast, but we figured that we would take a more in depth conversation to it, so that way we can and kind of get to it and understand it. So, how many times have you, Robbie? I told you, take the hat off. That's number two. Anyway, so I'm not going to go to number three, and then I'm going to kick you out. Anyway, so when is the moment?
You should have been a kindergarten teacher, Greg. I've been saying it for like 20 years now.
Yes. Anyway, so when is the point that you have started Googling signs that it's time to quit, or signs that it's time for me to get the heck out of Dodge?
You
And
know,
what?
I'll say I'll say this. When I was younger, I didn't really understand the emotions behind a toxic environment, so I wasn't really privy to when those decisions were right, wrong. I just knew that something didn't feel right, and I obviously didn't have a full understanding. Now I'm much more in tune with those emotions.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to stick to the facts, and that's something I'm going to really allude to in this conversation. The facts being, if you find yourself waking up and feeling depressed, you find yourself feeling just levels of anxiety when your alarm goes off in the morning, which I've probably said over 50 times in this podcast. There's a variety of different things that you have to look at. When you start Googling things, like when the signs are there for you to leave, it's probably time or getting close to time, because your mental health is critically important. And no job is worth sending yourself to the loony bin, for just for the sake of a paycheck.
Well, I
There's,
think we've all had that job where we're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get out of bed to actually go to work. Is that a tall tale sign? I'm sure Jesse over here has had his his fair share, as have I, of
Mhm.
jobs that we just wanted to quit. What about you, Jesse?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's definitely being in tune with the environment, I think is the biggest thing. For me, calling it quits in the past has been when I've done everything that I can in my hands, and then my boss is still unhappy with me for some reason and pushing me or preventing me either way from allowing me to be successful in my job when I know that I'm doing everything that I can to be successful in that environment. And it's maybe that the right tools aren't being handed to me. It might be that I'm not given enough bandwidth to do properly things with my team to keep things going. But for me, it's always been something with my boss and something with that environment surrounding my boss that has said, "You got to go, get out of there."
So you're telling me that your boss is to blame for all the reasons why you had to quit?
I didn't
You're
say
you're
that.
you're not
All of
responsible
the
for any of the reasons
reasons.
why you were quitting?
It's definitely, wow, Greg. Greg's on fire today. That's good. We missed that. Um, um, no, yeah, there's definitely reasons to blame for yourself. I agree, and ultimately, yeah, it's your decision to want to remove yourself from the organization that you're working in. I completely get
Yeah.
that. But there's also a plethora of reasons, including nosy HR people that get in the way of.
Oh, you mean the
Nosy
people that like
HR,
to justify their jobs for no reason? The people that
nosy
don't actually
HR
belong in an
people.
organization? Love it.
No, no,
you
no.
know,
There is no such thing as a nosy HR person.
saying
We are
HR
concerned. We
HR
are
coming and
concerned
saying,
individuals.
you need to take this person and either write them out or you need to get them promoted or move them around. They try to get into your whole operations shindig. And you're like, yeah, because you
No, that
know the
is not the
best.
way that it works.
hmm
Hmm.
Performance, performance.
Anyway, so yeah, whenever I think it's fair to say, Robbie, that you said earlier that you really did not know how to actually come to terms with it, understand it, about the emotional part whenever you're younger, because we may not have that emotional intelligence to understand where that's at. And I think that was a great point because we, as being a little bit older, and
Well, you're
um,
definitely a lot older, but let's go ahead and cut the shit.
we didn't have to say that. I am very much very young, and I look beautiful, which I always do.
Spri-
So, which is
Sprightly.
awesome. No, not surprisingly, it's of course that's what it is. Anyway, so I think that over the course of time, we've actually had to understand what that means for us personally, and it's going to be
Mhm.
different for every person. And that's the thing that people have to understand is that just because I could be burned out for a certain reason and I need to quit doesn't mean that Joe Schmo is. And that's the reason why there's different jobs and different environments for everyone, and it may not be that cultural fit. It might be the guilt that you have saying that, oh my gosh, I have to stick it out. It's always bad. It's going to be bad. And we're just going to stick it out for the way that we need to. I don't think that's the case. I think that you have to look at your self well being. And all three of us can make a testament to that, that it is detrimental to our lives, to our health, and potentially to our families if we've had that job loyalty and not our our self loyalty. Would you all agree with that?
Yeah, what I'll say is this, as a coaching career professionals, 90% of my clients, and I think there's actually some pretty close statistics. It's like in the 80 to 90% range. People are unsatisfied in their jobs. Their cost of living is the highest it's ever been. Their pay has stayed the same. They're having to deal with more workloads. All you hear in corporate meetings nowadays is we're going to do more with less, which was the telltale sign for me to get the fuck out. What I'll say is this. You've got to be mindful that this is an employer's market right now.
Of
So
course.
if you're going to make the job, if you're going to make that decision to start looking elsewhere, make sure you have something lined up, or at least at the very, you have a plan to have some savings in the bank before you just up and quit, out of an emotional tangent because you can't deal with someone. Taking a minute to really think things through before you start mouthing off, in a way that could be detrimental to your employment, is critically important. Because right now you're going up against anywhere from a couple of hundred to a couple of thousand, applicants in new job
Easily.
markets. So, it's something that I have the conversation with, people are like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And it's like, okay, well, let's structure out a plan to make this where you're not ready to head up to the roof and dive off head first. Let's make a plan where you actually have an exit strategy, and let's do this strategically in a way that makes sense. But be prepared, because employers know that it's their market. So they're
Mm-hmm.
starting to really come down with some policies that are pretty identical across the board, that are going to make your job just as miserable at the next employer.
F-bomb language.
Oh, Greg
You flipped
knows.
me off prior to the beginning of this. Shut up, Greg.
Greg knows. He's sitting back there typing away on those SOPs, just loving it, just smiling away.
I may or may not have written and currently and will I'll forever write SOPs and policies and procedures. Yes, that's what I have to do. That's part of my job.
You love
But
it
Jesse,
though.
what about you? Do you think that it's in us that we're supposed to stick it out and that we're supposed to actually, stop whining and just suck it up and go with it?
Well, unfortunately, financially, that's what you have to do sometimes, and two,
That's a
it's
point too. Yeah, what
also
Bob said.
a misunderstanding sometimes. I think that there's times that you just need to take a step back and take a look at what you're actually wanting to leave the workplace about. Um, Unfortunately, I've tried in the past to um, address the concerns that I have with my boss, and it's led to termination,
Mhm.
which I don't think is very ethical to begin with. Bringing concerns up to your boss about something going on in the workplace, and then you're being handed a pink slip, um, and
Mm.
that's a telltale sign that I should have got out, of course. Um, but you have to sometimes. I mean, financially, and like what Robbie was saying, it's very competitive out there. There's tons of people that are really unhappy in their current jobs, and they're looking for something else. They're looking to
For
get
sure.
out, and a lot of people are even applying across industries, trying to use their skills to especially get out of the current industry that they've been working in because they're tired of it.
Yep.
They want something new, they want something fresh, and they think they're going to find it in a different industry, and it very well could be. I think that's a great move for someone that's looking to get out of their current issue. Look at if it's the industry that's causing you to want to jump and want to keep looking for a different job. If it's just the industry that you're working in, especially with experience working in hospitality and having friends that worked in retail, those are two very tough industries to work in. And um, and my friend, he went into banking and is having a really good time with that of going across industry and putting retail behind him and being able to cross industries. So look at
Yeah.
what's really causing it and see if it might be something industry specific because once you
And
pick up another job, it's going to be the same thing.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll say that, we talked about on our last episode, the work besties and whether they're your actual friends or not. But companies have leveraged, like, oh, you don't want to leave your peeps behind, do you? I'm looking at you, HR, because I know
I
you
have
fucking play that
never
game.
heard that before, ever. I don't.
Shut up.
No,
Shut
I have
up.
no, 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 no. Okay, never mind. That's really going to aggravate me because I have never heard that. I've never once uttered those words in
We'll
any
we'll
form
pull
or
it up on that.
fashion
We'll
at
pull it
work.
up on the next episode. We'll pull up the statistics of
No,
what
I'm not
HR
going to do
departments
anything like
do in a
that
lot.
because it's not true.
Okay, we'll pull it
All
up.
It
right.
may
So,
not have
anyways,
been said
so
in
you're
that fashion, but it's said in a different way of what about your workplace, the work culture?
no okay.
Aren't you
Your
having
culture
a
fit might be a different thing. That's
exact
completely
culture,
different. Yeah,
family,
that's
and
part of
work
it.
friends is the
No,
same thing?
anyway, so I'm going to move on for that because that's aggravating. It's not true, and I'm not going to let y'all spew out lies and lies and more
Lies.
lies. What? How
The
does it
department, the
go?
department
Fake
in
news,
charge of
fake
lies.
news, fake news. Anyway,
Wow.
so some of the red flags that you've had, or some of the concerns that you've talked about, is actually very true. And Jesse, you made a particular point in there that I find very, very concerning is when you're passed over for an opportunity, whether it be even a transfer or a lateral move. Lateral is the same, same position, or not same position, different position, same pay, same level of job. That's what a lateral, if you guys don't know, or a promotion. And so you kind of get that frustration out, or you have that frustration of, hey, why am I working so hard doing all that I need to do, but yet you're going to pass me over for what's going on and some of those promotions or those other opportunities. And then you have the other part of that is, hey, I want these opportunities. I want to advance. I want to move forward. However, your boss is nowhere around to have that conversation with you. And they're not going to bat for you for that promotion. They're like, oh,
or
I'm
to
too
coach and
busy. I
develop
can't do
you.
this, or, I can't do that. And I've seen that happen. It's happened to me. And it's like, am I really that important to you, or am I just a workhorse and I just need to get the heck out of Dodge and leave?
Well, something I have conversations with career professionals about all the time is, have you made your supervisor aware that you would like the opportunity to promote? Because
Yes.
they're not going to just read your mind. Just putting your head down and doing 150% of your actual required workload is just demonstrating that you're willing to go above and beyond. Without having those set clear paths in place and putting those conversations together about what your intentions are, you're going to work yourself into the ground, and that's just digging yourself an early career grave. Where you're going to find yourself just quitting and quitting and quitting, and going from job to job to job. Make sure that you're being very intentional with your one-on-ones. Make sure that those meetings are aligned
Mm-hmm.
around what does my path look like moving forward. A lot of people are afraid to have those conversations, but your supervisor is not a mind reader. They may get the instance, or they may get the impression that your intention is to, promote, but without you making that a clear goal, it's never just going to work itself in every job that you go into. You need to sit, clearly define what your objectives are, from a career growth perspective.
Yeah, and you have to have a boss that's going to be willing to work on those goals with you and work and coach you along too. A lot of bosses don't take the time to sit down and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we understand that you're wanting to be promoted. Let's set some goals and achievements that I want you to be able to accomplish in your current job until we get there. And unfortunately, bosses feel that they are too busy to have personal one on one time with their direct reports, which I think is just insane. And they get caught up in their workload and their boss
Mm-hmm.
pressures on them and completely start to lose opportunity for coaching and development with their own direct reports.
Well, yeah, and
100%.
then if you're not advocating for yourself and you're not pushing anybody else, there's no, like Robbie was saying, there's no magic crystal out there that your boss is going to know what's going on, what's in your head, what your ambitions are. So you have to let that be known. Now, there's a point of being forceful about it, and then you get to that point where it's like, I keep telling you, hey, I want to do this, I want to go there, and then the boss is just like, okay, 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 check, check, we've had this conversation, and
Mhm.
I'm going to document that we've had a conversation, but there's nothing in there that describes what the conversation was actually about. And that's where you're having that moment in time of like, huh, maybe I should start looking elsewhere because either this boss is not advocating for me, there's no structured way for me to move up, and things like that. And that's difficult to do, and that's where this whole conversation of is should I call it quit or not. And I think my personal opinion is if you're not having a boss that's going to advocate for you, you got to look somewhere else, whether it's within the
Mhm.
same company for a different boss or with a different company altogether. And yeah, it
Or you
might be
can play the,
difficult.
or you can play, or you can play the waiting game, and
Oh yeah, but you're going to be
that's
waiting
not
for
a
quite a
that's not a
while.
bad strategy. That's not a bad strategy, especially in positions where for example, like retail, where store managers will, they get swapped around to different locations to bring in new blood and bring in new ideas. You have to really read the room and really have an understanding of what that cycle looks like. Obviously, if you're working in an isolated office space where there's not a lot of movement between department heads and things like that, that's obviously waiting until someone dies can potentially put
Jeez.
you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah,
But
Wait
there.
you,
until
Once you get up there, there's
you
that point.
see them. Wait until you see them having to take multiple trips to Greg's office, and then all of a sudden, bye bye, they're gone. Hallelujah.
Mhm, mhm, exactly.
Oh boy.
Let's talk about the difference between job loyalty and career loyalty. What do you guys think that the difference between those two titles really are?
Wait a minute, Robbie. Can you repeat that for me?
Oh, I said, what do you think the difference between job loyalty and career loyalty? The terms, what do you think the difference between those terms are?
That's a good question. I actually can't really answer that. Um, well,
I think career
go for
loyalty
it.
is being committed in the industry that you're working in,
Hmm.
and committed to a specific job title that you've been given, or um, versus job loyalty as far as the specific location or task or department that you've been
Or the
directed to
coworkers,
manage.
or the coworkers within that organizational structure.
Hmm.
Um, you know, Listen, there's people that have no problem staying in their roles for 15, 20, 25 years.
Yep.
There's
And,
nothing wrong
you
with
know,
that. Make sure you listen to that. There's
yeah, there's a
nothing
there's a
wrong
lot
with
of
that.
cor there's a lot of corporate cultures, and I can tell you, I come from one of them, that if these people are not moving, what are they doing here? And
Right. Yeah.
they start to really,
Crazy.
if they have no interest in promoting, what are they doing here? And
Right.
it was always the idea to give those individuals a hard time, which I didn't understand. Like, this person's producing at a high level, they've been doing it consistently for 20 years. Why are
Hmm.
we giving them a hard time about staying in the role that they're in? Yes,
Right.
I understand new blood, but not everybody has a desire to be a leader. Not everybody has a desire to be a manager. Not everybody has a desire to move
Hmm.
up in the next role. There's a lot of
Exactly.
people that work in union jobs, which my former employer was for frontline employees. And those people were perfectly fine because they were receiving annual raises. They were very good at their job. They showed up on time. They did their job effectively. Were they top producers? By no means, no. But they were doing what they were supposed to do. And I refuse to give those people a difficult time. And I would always vouch for those people just being consistent in producing in a way that you could always rely on that individual to bring a certain level of production.
Right.
End of discussion. And
Yep.
let's move on to the next. Let's move on to the next person of topic. And that was just my mindset.
Well, I don't know about you, but I googled it, and of course it says career loyalty means being committed to your long-term professional growth and skill set, and job loyalty is dedication to a single employer. And should you have job loyalty? Is that even a thing? Why? Why would you want to have loyalty to a single employer?
Well, it was really a big thing because, us as millennials, we were told if you work hard and you remain loyal, your company will take care of you, you'll get a pension and all this bullshit. You go to college, you know, which we all determined was malarkey, to say the least. It just never
Difference
panned
of
out that
opinions
way.
there. I think it's good for certain things, not for all things. But anyways, let's go forward.
I mean, realistically, career loyalty, there's so many people that are developing technology that's meant to replace them later on. You're seeing, I mean, we're in the
A
gilded
lot.
age of layoffs for technology that is nowhere near ready to replace humans. But that's a topic for an entirely different day. At the end of the day, we've got to be in the mindset. Most people are in survival mindset, right now, basically living paycheck to paycheck. If you look at the numbers, you've got to be understanding of how much loyalty is there, and loyalty needs to be a two-way street without question.
Exactly.
And if
Yeah.
you can't definitively say that that loyalty is two-way, stop that loyalty. Stop it.
Right. Yep. I agree.
So,
That's
Robbie, I
agree.
think I think you made an excellent point there of what's how you want to deal with things and how you're looking at them, especially if it's a career or if it's actually your job loyalty. And we don't get that anymore. That's not happening when it comes to companies and jobs. They don't have that loyalty anymore. And I think that's where we, as the millennial groups, are kind of misrepresented over the course of our younger life that we had that opportunity and we don't, or it doesn't seem like it doesn't, which it probably doesn't. And I think companies have no loyalty to their people anymore. And you talked about a pension. Some people don't even know what a pension is anymore. They're like, what the heck is a pension? And
Gen
I
Z certainly
remember
doesn't.
Yeah.
I remember growing up and hearing about pensions, and this is going to help you with your retirement, apart from a 401k and stuff like that. You know, that's not there anymore.
Well, pensions were different, and they were the primary, and companies got greedy and said, you know what?
Mhm.
Let's have our companies invest back into our stocks. Listen, that's another topic for another day again.
Mhm.
Oh,
But yeah,
Enron.
yeah. Needless to say, pensions. That topic makes me so angry. I don't even want to go into that conversation right now, just because of how just screwed the average worker has become.
Yeah. Well, my thing is that also whenever you're coming down to that pipeline, you're understanding what's going on. You have that low hanging fruit. No, I'm just joking. I was saying some jargon, but when you start having those physical symptoms, you get depressed, you lose your appetite, you have a more appetite, you're not sleeping well. I think I said that already. For me, when I get overly whelmed and done, I don't sleep. I don't sleep well at all. It's actually really really bad, and so I have a lot of really bad nightmares. Sometimes some night terrors. But it's like when I get to that point, have I gone too far? And
Yeah, it's time to pull the trigger. It's time to pull the trigger.
I know that hopefully I'm not getting too personal. I know myself, I've done it, and I know speaking with my great friend Jesse over there, he's had that problem,
Oh, I
and
think I
it's
think
like,
I think I'm going to say it's a general consensus in the workplace, anywhere from VP level down to frontline employees. I see it every single week,
but
every
why
week.
why do we let ourselves get that far? And why is it allowing ourselves
Because we're living
to?
paycheck to paycheck.
Because we live in a system where people elevate their standard of living with their standard of income, and then they get themselves stuck because the higher you go, the less positions of that title there are. So there's a lot
Mhm.
less plethora to pull from. There's a lot less jobs to pull from. And in this job market, it's even worse than it was 5 years ago. Companies are eliminating middle managers. In
Yeah, a
effect
lot.
to with AI. There's no longer different divisions. I mean, it's just the new normal, unfortunately. And there's two economies, and billionaires will tell you this. There's the 1% of individuals that are doing extremely well, the best that they've ever done, approaching trillions of dollars in net assets. And ultimately, there's people, they're workers that have had the same rate of pay, or they're just getting their standard 3%, which has been another topic of our conversations on this podcast. That really isn't meeting up with the rate of inflation. And so people are taking those pay cuts. They're trying to find new work. They don't know what that looks like. There's been an entire change into, the dynamic of how to actually effectively find a job, with artificial intelligence being used to filter out, applicants. I mean, there's just so many different dynamics that it came at
Yeah.
us and
There's
it hit
a
us like a fucking brick wall.
there's a lot on the employer side too, though, that I want to recognize too. I mean, the employers are feeling a pinch too, and yeah, I mean, there's some companies out there that have been operating on exuberant profit margins and been railing in the cash and having the heyday with everything. But there is a lot of employers that are feeling the economic struggles, especially in the cost of goods right now, and seeing their profit margins quickly diminish. So I just want to call attention to that. The employer side too. I mean, it is difficult
So
on both sides.
so would you say that some of it has to do with like your fear and your comfort, or potentially,
100% fear.
I think we were talking about pensions earlier or whatever, but it's like your 401k match or great benefits and stuff like that. Are we like holding or grasping on to those things that we need to hold on to and want because they're with our current job, but yet we're miserable?
Yeah, I mean, people are putting themselves into $1,000 car payments as a normal now, Greg. I mean, delinquencies on credit cards, delinquent. I mean, we're in the precipice of a
Yeah.
bubble right now,
Yeah,
and people are you're starting to see early sign. And I'm an economics major, so I'm very familiar with this stuff. What I'll say is this: economically, we are looking at the very early stages of, defaulting on loans, and the signs are starting to uptick in those, and we've got to see what the next 90 days looks like, because
Mm.
once defaults start to happen at the consumer level, they start to happen at the
yeah,
corporate level, and companies are not going to be able to meet their financial obligations if they can't receive credit, because that's what our entire society is built on. Needless to
that's what it
say,
goes off
I
of.
don't
Yeah,
want to I don't want to instill fear, but be very mindful of what happens before the end of the summer. Pay very
right.
close
Mm.
attention, because this could be nearly catastrophic, with
Mm.
credit card debt at the highest rates that they've ever been. And just a variety of different credit elements that could be at the highest delinquencies that they've ever been. We're looking at potentially 2008 levels, and people are being more in debt now than they were at those stages. So yeah, it's a fear thing.
Well, and I think that we have to look at that. And there's uh, right now I'm in the market. I'm buying or looking to buy a house, and going out there looking. I don't know if y'all remember the 2000 bust of boom and then bust of the housing market, where they were starting to offer adjustable rates and things like that. I know I'm getting off topic,
Mhm,
but something I want to say. They're doing that now, and so
mhm.
that to me that's going to go in that route, and that's where the fear of losing my job comes through, and do I want to stay there longer because I'm in fear of what's going to happen. Now, mind you, my current job, I absolutely love my job. I love what I'm doing, love where I'm at, and
You've
so
been there less than a year. Give it 18 months before we start having this conversation.
whatever. I don't see that changing, but well, that's always the case. And so I understand that fear is there, that comfort is there, but why are we allowing ourselves to run our lives based on that fear?
Because we're
Because
in capitalism. That's why. It's the system. And
okay,
I don't want to go into an economics tutorial, but at the end of the day, it's what is meant to happen. It's what capitalism is. We work more than the rest of the industrialized world.
yeah,
Value in things is what we're born to do. We are one of the only societies that really asks people, so what do you do for a living? So we can size up how much level of respect we're willing to give someone else.
Yeah.
No other
Right.
society does that shit. We're
Exactly.
the only ones that do that. And it's
How
because
big of a
we're we
house do
we
you have?
exactly. And that's a
Fancy
huge
car you
problem. Now,
drive?
the problem is that free market capitalism is great in early stages of capitalism, but we're in like late stage capitalism, and I highly encourage everyone listening to this podcast, look up what typical end stage capitalism looks like. you are going to be even more scared. Needless to say, you start to see physical symptoms. You start to see things like reduced sleep or staying up late at night trying to scroll and find new jobs. 3 o'clock in the morning when you've got to be to work
Hmm.
at 7:30 the next day. You
Oh
start
gosh.
overeating or you stop eating. Or you start putting on weight or you start losing weight. You start having, more doctor's visits. There's a lot of things that you really have to look
Yeah.
at to understand what type of condition that you're in. And I know that both of you have had these types of experiences. I have, where I'm going to all different types of medical facilities trying to figure out what's wrong, and the culprit was my job. The culprit was my
Yeah,
job. Would I have
yeah,
known that in my early 20s? Hell no, I wouldn't have. But I'll tell you that as I became more mature, more sound in my emotional intelligence, those things were undeniable. And I really had to look at it from a perspective, is this job worth my life? And the answer was no, every single
yeah.
time. It's
One
not.
of one of the big signals for me is like witnessing. I have a very strong ethical and moral compass, so witnessing things you
Yeah.
can't unsee, ethics, culture, leadership, you know, um, just with with the way that economically things are, there's a lot of behind the scenes movements that can happen and shady deals that can be started to be made and preferability with certain vendors because they're getting given a nice cut to the owner because they know each other and um, and that when you start uncovering some stuff like that, and again, like I get the employer side, they're struggling too and everything, but once you start letting some unethical and moral decisions come into the workplace and your employees start seeing that, they're
Hmm.
gonna follow suit and they're gonna let up on their leadership with their team of how they're managing, and then it's just going to keep going and getting toxic. And I've seen that destroy workplaces to where
Oh
people
yeah.
are jumping ship left and right because they can't handle it. It's just a
Well,
lot of people have that moral compass, and they can't
yes.
stand being in a workplace of toxicity.
And that's where we all have been, is like, do we want to stay there or not? Is this more of a kind of like a rough time, or is this, do I need to go ahead and just jump ship now, or what? And those are kind of the conversations that nobody ever has with, with themselves, with other people, with their friends, with their family members, because they're scared of it. I think Robbie was saying earlier, it's, or Jesse, somebody said, what kind of, what kind of level are we giving you based on what job you have and how much money you make? And that's something that we, need to get away from. But it's just like, are we giving you that chance to overcome that? And is it because of, was it a wrong or immoral or unmoral decision made by the company, by a manager or something like that? Because once that happens, is it going to happen again? So are we giving that additional chance or not? And that's something. I mean, when do you not want to call it quits when it's just a rough patch? Is that something that you can actually
Right.
see?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Oh
so.
yeah.
I,
Definitely.
I think that, my big telltale sign was I was a very energetic, positive light for a lot of employees. I was full of energy, full of, positivity, and I became a worse version of myself.
Okay, you must have happened after I've known you. So, because I mean, I don't know who that person is. I know
Greg,
that this
Wow.
person,
friendly shit talk
this person has always been a grump in all the jobs that,
a
well, not
grump.
all. There's only
Wow.
one, and the job that we have worked at. So I don't know what he's talking about. People, never mind.
Wow.
And I hear
Greg,
crickets after that one.
yeah, because the level of bullshit that you spew sometimes is just astronomically out of this world.
I
Uh,
don't do that. I speak truths.
Typical
oh,
HR.
gee, yeah, HR. It's full of shit.
Full of
Um,
shit.
I started to find myself wanting to, like we've talked about in previous episodes, I've wanted to isolate. I've wanted to, I don't want to deal with any of these people. I just
Hmm.
want to keep to myself, do my job, and go home. And for me, that's a telltale sign that I'm in an environment that I don't want to be in. And I started to see that more frequently. And what's funny is around the time that I left the company was a pretty mass exodus of people that I'd known that had worked for the company for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And that has just been continuously happening. And I think that upper leadership in the organization wanted it that way. I think that they just wanted to bring in people at a lesser pay. I think they wanted to bring in people that they could mold into that whatever they wanted to be. And that, seeing that certain cuts and quality of service and just degradation of overall employee satisfaction and employee benefits and just so many different things, if nobody's talking about it, nobody knows about it, right? So
Yeah.
getting rid of the people
Very true.
that used to be there for the good days, yeah, these people have all moved on to either start their own businesses or they've moved on to different telecom companies. And I'm starting to see this cycle where these people are, they were with the company that I worked for a long time. They've moved on to different telecommunications companies, and now I'm seeing a cycle of them moving companies every couple of years. And this has just become the new standard, the new norm.
Well, I think yeah, it's like say that's definitely become the new norm of moving companies from year after year. And I've seen where managers are like, "Well, I don't like that this person has not stayed there for, 3, 5, 10 years." I'm like, "Well, that's not
Yeah.
normal anymore."
You try
You
to find a
That
resume.
might be the most real thing
right.
I've ever heard you say, Greg.
Most of those people
I've
are
spoken truth.
working in their jobs and they're not looking to move. The ones that have tenure. That's why you don't see them on the applications because they're happy where they're at.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then sometimes you just get laid off, like we you talked about earlier. Now, Jesse, I want to know about you. If you're looking at a job and you're having those moments of sleep, or eating too much, or staying up all night scrolling, doom scrolling, and stuff like that, as I call it. When do you say that? Hey, I'm just giving it one more chance, and
Hmm.
or when should you talk to your manager to
I'm
say, hey,
almost I'm almost there to my
unhappy.
stocks vesting, things like that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what
No.
is your opinion on that? Because I know you've been there, and we've all been
Hmm.
there. And so what are your opinions on that? When do you think it's time to have that conversation, or give it that additional chance?
Yeah. No. I've definitely taken the time to um, ad- acknowledge and address my part in it and
Mm-hmm.
to get some outside help to work through those issues that I may be having so that I can get myself back to a state of being committed to my job, pulling up my pants, back into the routine of getting into work at a reasonable time and and actually putting my best foot forward. And I have through that been able to turn around my attitude in general towards the current situation. And I think there's definitely something to be said that if you're wanting just to call it quits because you're burnt out or what, if you have some PTO, take the PTO, get out of the situation
Yep.
and take a step back. If you have even maybe short-term disability, look at that as also as an option just to take a step back and have your job still protected. But but for me, it has been just looking internally to myself and going, hey, this is just a situation. You can either sit in the muck and make each other's lives around you muck, and the employees that you're leading and managing that was the hardest thing for me was if I was having a hard time, my employees were having a hard time because I wasn't communicating with them, I wasn't coaching and developing them, I was failing as a leader. Um, and so sometimes you just gotta pull yourself up by bootstraps and get back to having a mentality of, hey, we got this. We're gonna put some things that we can't control, especially that may be going on in the company, and we're gonna just make our environment the best that it can be. And through that, I've had
Yeah.
some real success with turning around guest satisfaction scores, with bringing in corporate accounts and boosting our revenue because they've come in and they've looked at a team that's rejuvenated because their leader rejuvenated themselves.
You have
So
to
what I
remember,
heard there, what I heard there is it's not always about you. And I know I talk a lot about taking responsibility of your own actions and stuff like that. Sometimes there are issues that are going on that are outside of your control that are reflective of the entire situation. And so that's when the possibility is that you need to be like, okay, I need to step aside. Is this really myself? Or is it something that is outside of my control? Or is it
Hmm.
something that I do need to give that second chance to? Because
Yeah.
it happens. We all have issues that are going on in our lives. We all have those ups and downs that we need to take care of. And if we're not allowing ourselves to have those moments that, I need to reflect and say, oh hey, this is not where I want to be or where I should be. If that's a continuous conversation question you're having, then that's something that you need to sit down and have that mindset, and or that thought of, is it time for me to call it quits, or is it just a rough moment, which happens. So don't my recommendation is, don't make a haste decision. Don't make one without thinking it through, seeing what your pros and cons are going to be on there. But then, when do you need to start that job search? Is it a point that you need to let anybody know? And I think we've had this conversation before, or even you letting yourself know.
Mhm.
Whenever we're at that spot, Robbie, when you're saying, "Oh, okay, when do I need to start searching?" And am I really making it known, or am I not? Or if I'm going to call it quits. You said earlier, make sure to have something backed up, because we're in that time frame where it's an employer's market, and we want to make sure we have something lined up.
for everyone, it's different. For me, it had a lot to do with the corporate messaging. I've alluded to this before. If you work for a publicly traded company, you're the third priority as an employee on a company's list. First and foremost is investors, the fiduciary responsibility, which in and of itself I find unethical in pretty much every aspect of the word. Needless to say, customers come next because they're the ones that generate additional revenue. Revenue
The
comes before everything
money.
else, everything else. And then employee satisfaction is a distant third, excuse me. Let me swap those words around. For me, it started to be, I was always someone that operated with integrity. I would not take shortcuts. And when companies start to reduce workforces and the production doesn't cut down, people start to take those shortcuts. My values stopped aligning with the company's actions. There's so many companies that would rather make an example of a few small bad employees for doing certain things and continuing behind the scenes to do unethical things. Having a culture of shadiness.
Oh, shadiness.
You see, large corporations getting lawsuits and nobody goes to jail for defrauding people, for lying, for doing all of these things because it's cheaper to do that than it is to just actually follow an ethical standard, an ethical approach.
It's actually a
So,
very good point that you had there, Robbie. Yeah.
you've got to really take a look at it from a leadership perspective. What kind of leader are you? Do I value these, or do I want to bundle myself in with all of these people that continuously win awards year after year, turning a blind eye, pretending like they don't see
Hmm.
shit that we all know is happening behind the scenes? Or do I find something that's going to align more with what I'm looking for, which is probably going to require that you get out of that publicly traded space. You're probably going to need to look for a smaller employer. And in whatever
Mhm.
way you need to do that, you need to understand what your internal cause is, because what my reason is going to be very different from everyone else's. Well, not everyone else's, but everybody's going to have their different ways, right? So that's what you
Yep.
have to look at, and you have to really look at it from what's the difference between a rough patch and a broken situation.
Well, the one thing that I can suggest, and or what I, kind of was wondering about, and Jesse, I'm kind of wondering to know if you've done this before, is if you're looking and trying to make like a pros and cons list of what's pros, what's cons, or
Hmm.
if you could change something in this
Hmm.
situation, is that something that you're actually able to change or not? And then what are your options there?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely a good suggestion. Definitely have sat down with my partner in the past and have done that when evaluating um, one job that I was working in, and they had come to me saying, in order to turn things around and get them to where we need you to be, we're gonna ask you to work 6 12-hour days, and
Jeez.
here's the plan for it, and they didn't say it, but it clearly was, and if not, we're gonna find someone else that can do that. So I quickly sat down with my partner at the time and was like, here's what's going on. Here's what they came at me with. I can already feel the action plan and the performance reviews coming my way to get me to move
Pip.
faster and harder. Yeah, pivot in their eyes, and be the one to save their asses because they let two hotels go to shit, and now it's all of a sudden my responsibility and my fault if I don't get things turned around. And I quickly said no, thank you, but no, thank you. Have a great day.
I think I know what Greg's answers to this is going to be, but I have a feeling me and Jesse are going to be on the same page, but I could be wrong. Should you talk to your manager before you start looking?
Why not? If you have nothing to hide, why would you not?
There's a certain way to go about it. You did obviously don't want to sit there and say, hey, like if things don't change, I'm out of here because
Fuck this job.
yeah, exactly.
Definitely do not use that language.
Yeah.
But sometimes people do have those kind of conversations because they have that
Yeah.
level of connection with their boss, and uh not every job industry and the way that people handle each other are as professional as most of the instances that we've been a part of, and they have been able to go to their boss and say, hey, you're pissing me the fuck off. You better turn shit around. And
Hey.
how you're handling things and how you're treating people and how you've gotten yourself into a toxic place as a leader, or I'm out and you're gonna be screwed.
Yeah.
And you know,
Especially with the employer's market not advisable. There's
No, I don't know if
definitely
right now. Yeah. Test.
yeah.
I think you were like, know your time or whatever. Know the situation. Definitely the time
Yeah.
to not do that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no,
You
you
But
know,
have to be
the thing
respectful
is,
about it.
you have to make sure that you're setting realistic expectations on what you want and what you don't want, what's possible, what's not possible,
write it
knowing that
down.
this is an or employer's market, saying that you can't have that. Oh, hey, you either give me a $20,000 raise or I'm out of here.
Yeah,
That's not realistic.
no.
Yeah. And you have to really understand what it would take for the change for you to want to stay. My
Hmm.
suggestion, and one of our big talking points is really having a plan for yourself, having an understanding of what staying
Hmm.
looks like, what would make it a better environment for you. Is that even a
Hmm.
possibility? Or are you quietly interviewing before you even admit it to yourself?
Yep.
And knowing when the right time to make that exit is critically important. So,
And
what's
it's
your guys'
very
thoughts on that?
difficult, very, very difficult when you're making that decision of when is enough,
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
sometimes it can go too far, and most of the time it's going to go too far. But
yeah.
when is enough that you're actually going to call it quits and that you're done with the situation?
If you're
And
having this conversation with yourself more than once a month, it's probably a good sign that it start to writing down what my plan is and writing
that
down,
you're
can I make this work, or can I make or do I need to start the process of getting the hell out?
Yep, I think that's a good something good to actually say, because it's not, and I will say that in this employer's market, it's going to take a significant amount of time for you to possibly, not always, but possibly find a new position, a new job,
Mhm.
because you're not necessarily stuck in the job, but you're stuck there because you're in that financial situation, and you have to have those funds to do what you need to pay your bills, to pay your rent, to pay your mortgages, to pay that lovely $1,000 car note that you were just talking about, Robbie. And I can't argue with that because I do, and that's something that you have to make sure that you're wanting to continue with and continue on, and having that lifestyle that you're used to. And
What your
so,
motivations are important.
yes, and your intentions and what's needed for you. So I want to give our final thoughts as we're running out of time, but I want to know what your final thoughts are and what you think people should do, and give them your information, or what your suggestion would be, and if you're at that point but you can't move on.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, for me, it would be taking a step back and really looking at what part are you playing in it. Because I think a lot of times we get to a situation that we're just pointing a lot of fingers, and we're not really
Mm-hmm.
looking back at ourselves internally to say, what part am I playing in this? Have I been committed to my job? Have I been doing the the responsibilities and the roles that I signed up for? Have I been fulfilling the job description that I signed off on and said that I was going to be doing? What's my part in it first?
Yeah.
Yep.
And and then look at the exterior factors. And if the exterior factors are so much weighing harshly on the side of that's actually the contributing factor as to why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, then make a plan to either try and address them internally with your boss or with your boss's boss. Definitely recommend going straight to your boss first, because going above them always can cause some havoc and some issues when it gets back
A
to
little
them.
bit.
Um, and also getting a consensus from the employees that you're leading as well. Sit down with your employees and see if they're also feeling the same constraints that you're feeling. And if it's a common theme between your employees that you may be leading, then you have a little bit um, more things to help back you up in that stance of when you do go to leadership to be, hey, this is affecting more than just me, and use that then as an opportunity to position yourself to really look good because you helped point out an issue that was going on internally with the company. You brought it to the right channels and then help create a solution to how we're going to be better about this, how we're
Mm-hmm.
going to change things around, implementing some different SOPs or whatever to get past and eliminate the
SOPs.
problem. You love that. And
SOPs.
and then I think that gives you a purpose then, and that really fulfills of like, hey, like I was able to help out to change some stuff that was going on internally, and now
Yep.
I think that that would help you feel a lot more comfortable in your job, and it also points from the leadership team that, hey, this person really stepped up. Instead of sitting in the muck of the mire and pointing fingers, they were able to rally
No,
together
it's your fault.
and get
No,
some
it's your fault. No, it's your fault.
Oh, the
make some
culture of finger
changes.
pointing, I don't miss that at all. Needless to say, here's my take, and I'm gonna be very quick with this. I want you to ask yourselves, if you have $30,000 in the bank and you
Yeah.
think about quitting, starting your own business, with no other financial obligations to really worry about, what do you feel? If you were offered a job that gives you 2 more weeks of vacation, but a $30,000 a year pay cut, what does that offer make you feel? If you got offered a job with the same pay, same benefits, different company, different culture, what does that make you feel? I want you to ask yourself that all the way up to an additional 50 grand per year. If you
Wow.
feel a sign of relief, it's a pretty good sign that you need to look inward and have a real conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
Don't be
Those
afraid
are
to have the
both really good. Yeah.
conversation. So, you know, leaving isn't failure, and I
Mm-mm.
think that we've all been
No.
conditioned to that loyalty because our parents' generation comes from the mindset that you work 1 or 2 jobs your entire life and you stick it out and blah, 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 just the
You're a
fucking lip
quitter.
service that we got.
Don't be a quitter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you put enough, stop eating avocado toast and all that shit. Needless to
Avocado
say,
toast.
we've got to have the real conversation with ourselves. Would our parents survive it in this job market? I could tell
No.
you mine would not. So,
No. No way.
with that being said, uh, it's all about the listener, right? What is it going to take for you to make the decision, and when do you start needing to have that serious conversation internally?
Yeah.
And that
And
litmus test is a great way to do that.
yeah, and my overall recommendation and suggestions for you would be, listen to both of those two, what Robbie and Jesse both said, because they're both very, very good questions to ask yourself and to utilize your tools and utilize your EAP and utilize your, either state benefits or FMLA, that's a federal benefit. And yeah, there's some of them that are unpaid, but some of them are paid. You have your short term disability, long term if you need to. And utilize your PTO. I've said this before, and reflect during that time. And if you need to take that step back, like Jesse was talking about, allow yourself to take that step back and disconnect and have that deep conversation. And then take what Robbie said and ask those questions. Is that something that you need? And I think
And
that's.
remember, oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, and just remember, your CEO may be making the most optimistic, rah rah conversation, town halls you've ever heard. But just remind yourself, they're trying to build a ship to go to Mars for a reason.
Yeah.
So focus on you. Okay, folks?
Yeah. And, that's the thing is you want to kind of like ask this to yourself. When do you want to know when to leave and when to call it quits? Only you will know that. Have that deep conversation with yourself. Understand your consequences. Understand what happened. Ask those deep questions for you. I think it's a very intense conversation that you have with yourself. Be honest. Be truthful with yourself. And try to take out certain things that are out of your control and deal with them. Make that list if you need to. Anyways, I think this was a great conversation. I think it was very good. I think we had some really good information in there. I think Robbie wearing that stupid hat during this whole episode really.
Hey, good luck to you
Uh,
guys in the rest of the playoffs.
it really aggravated me because I kept looking at that stupid hat. Anyway, so what if people wanted to listen to us or watch what we're at? Where can they do that at?
Right.
iHeartRadio. They can do it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. They can do it. Really, I mean, you can Google us. You
Google.
can follow us on Twitter. We don't have a Twitter, but you can follow us on social media. You can follow us on TikTok. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. You name it, we got it. So other than Twitter, because he's I think one of our least favorite billionaires. Did I say that out loud? Go ahead.
Wow.
Jesse, do we have a website or, how can people reach out to us if they want to let us say something to us?
Your2val.com. You are number two VAL.com and stories at your2val.com. Send us your stories.
Yeah, we
What's our
definitely
next
want to hear
episode,
those.
Greg?
What was that, Rob?
What's our next episode?
Oh, so our next episode is kind of a follow up to this one, which is when you're out there choosing that next job, what are those green, yellow, and red flags when you're looking at that next job and when you're interviewing and when you want to select it? So I think
Sounds
that's
like
a
we're
good
giving
lead
dating
up.
advice.
I think that's a great lead up to the next episode because you can take this episode and then that one and kind of combine them together. And so that way you can make those great decisions. Thank you both for being here today. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I really missed having these conversations with you all. And for all those out
Good
there,
to be
thank you
back.
for listening to us. Thank you for commenting, sending us those stories, and just being a part of the You're Too Valuable podcast. It's been amazing.
See you later, everybody.
Have a great day.